The Orion Empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Its fleet stretched across 300 star systems, each fleet bristling with weapons capable of annihilating entire planets. Its armies were drilled to perfection, its bureaucracies ruthlessly efficient. Maps marked conquered worlds with meticulous precision, noting every resource extracted, every population catalogued, and every rebellion swiftly extinguished. Every species the Empire had encountered had fallen into line, either through fear, diplomacy, or submission. Every species, that is except for humanity. Humans were small, apparently insignificant, confined to the Sol system, with fleets that could barely rival the scouting vessels of other species. Their technology appeared rudimentary by the galaxy's standards. Orbital stations modest in size, weapons seemingly unsophisticated, and propulsion systems that could not match interstellar cruisers in speed or power. Diplomats had scoffed at their primitive governance. Analysts had labeled them manageable. The Empire did not fear humans. It ignored them. And this would prove to be the galaxy's first fatal mistake. The first direct contact came quietly, almost inconspicuously. A survey fleet, 15 vessels strong, entered Sol space, tasked with a routine inspection and the subtle assertion of imperial authority. The fleet commander, Admiral Krell, was confident. He had studied the Sol system in minute detail, cataloged every orbital installation, every planetary surface scan, every trace of human industrial activity. What he saw confirmed his arrogance. Modest cities, functional but unremarkable technology, a single, populous planet that seemed entirely devoted to local agriculture and industry. "The humans are inconsequential," Krell said, his voice carrying over the bridge intercom. "Observe them, collect data, and ensure they acknowledge imperial oversight. There is no need for aggression. This is a routine courtesy, nothing more. They cannot possibly threaten us." The fleet sensors recorded minor fluctuations as they entered orbit around Earth, but the officers assumed them to be sensor noise. Propulsion anomalies, energy field distortions, and communication interference were dismissed as technical glitches. The humans, they believed, were incapable of any sophisticated response. Meanwhile, the humans observed silently. From hidden orbital platforms and subterranean bunkers, they had watched the galaxy for decades. Humanity had anticipated this moment for generations. Every energy signature of the Orion fleets had been logged, every propulsion fluctuation analyzed, every communication protocol decrypted and cataloged. In secret, humans had constructed an arsenal of inevitable precision, orbital defense grids that could incapacitate entire fleets, drone factories buried beneath mountains, kinetic weapons capable of targeting ships with millimeter accuracy, and AI systems that could anticipate enemy maneuvers before they were conceived. And yet, humans did not strike immediately. Their first response was patience. They allowed the fleet to approach, to assess the system, to relax in the comfort of arrogance. They allowed the aliens to assume superiority, to let hubris blind them. Every motion, every scan, every sensor reading was being analyzed in real time by the human networks. Nothing was left to chance. The humans understood the galaxy's mistake. It assumed that time worked against the small, the weak. Humans had turned that assumption into a weapon. The first fleet vessel entered geosynchronous orbit above Earth. Its engines faltered without explanation. Energy readings dropped. Communication arrays jammed and onboard systems malfunctioned with perfect timing. Panic spread across the bridge. Officers shouted, trying to re-engage engines, to restore systems, to contact command. Every attempt failed. A drone, undetectable by visual, infrared, or radar sensors, latched onto the hull and began methodical, surgical intervention, neutralizing critical components without harming the crew. The humans had struck without striking. The Empire had assumed weakness. The humans had exercised inevitability. Admiral Krell was the first to realize the scope of the mistake. "Impossible," he muttered. "This should not be happening. Their technology is primitive. Our fleets are superior. There must be a malfunction and interference." But even as he spoke, the failures continued. The humans had not acted recklessly. They had acted with precision, targeting only what was necessary to disable the vessel without provoking a larger response. It was a warning and a demonstration. Underestimate us, and you risk everything. The incident escalated as more fleet vessels arrived to assist the immobilized scout. The Empire's commanders assumed that overwhelming numbers would intimidate the humans into submission. They had miscalculated. The humans observed every approach, every maneuver, and every deployment of weapons. Orbital defense arrays, previously hidden from even the most sophisticated scans, realigned, targeting key propulsion systems with millimeter accuracy. Drone swarms emerged from orbital and subterranean factories, moving faster than sensors could detect, neutralizing weapon systems without collateral damage. Kinetic projectiles struck ships' engines and shields, immobilizing entire squadrons. The humans had transformed the battlefield into a demonstration of inevitability. Every imperial strategy, every tactical assumption, had already been calculated and countered. In the midst of the chaos, the humans displayed an almost alien calm. From the surface, life seemed ordinary. Children played, markets thrived, miners worked, citizens went about their daily routines. Nothing in appearance hinted at the lethal precision lying beneath. Every mundane act delivering goods, maintaining energy grids, transporting resources was part of a larger network of control and preparation. Humans had weaponized patience, making the ordinary itself part of an unstoppable arsenal. The Empire, once supremely confident, began to realize the depth of its error. Subspace transmissions failed. Reinforcements never arrived. Fleets that were supposed to assert dominance were immobilized, rendered powerless, not through overwhelming force, but through anticipation, precision, and inevitability. Humanity had turned time, patience, and observation into weapons far deadlier than any missile or energy cannon. And so, the first mistake against humans was made quietly, subtly. The galaxy believed it had encountered a species of limited capacity. It had failed to recognize that humans measured power not in numbers or speed, but in preparation, patience, and the inescapable force of inevitability. One mistake had been enough. One failure to respect humans' capacity for calculation and foresight would set in motion a collapse that no empire could withstand. From the surface, Earth appeared calm. From orbit, the immobilized fleet seemed almost peaceful. Ships drifting silently, crews confused, systems failing with clockwork precision. Humans did not strike in anger, did not gloat in superiority. They observed, they waited, they executed inevitability. And the galaxy, arrogant, unprepared, and dismissive, would soon learn the cost of one single fatal mistake. The lesson was clear. Underestimate humans at your peril. Patience is power. Silence is strategy. Inevitability is a weapon, and the Orion Empire had already begun to feel its weight. The initial fleet immobilization sent shockwaves through the Orion Empire. Officers aboard distant command vessels could not comprehend what had occurred. Ships that were meant to assert control now floated helplessly in orbit around Earth, their engines dead, shields down, communication arrays failing intermittently. Panic spread like wildfire. The first mistake, the dismissal of humanity, had set in motion consequences no imperial mind had anticipated. From the surface of Earth, humans continued their routines as if nothing had happened. Markets hummed with commerce. Miners emerged from subterranean tunnels, children played in parks, and civic infrastructure operated seamlessly. To the galaxy's senses, nothing extraordinary appeared, and that was the brilliance of it. Humanity had weaponized patience. Every ordinary action was a layer in a broader network of inevitability, a web designed to trap arrogance and punish assumptions. Deep beneath the planet's crust, vast bunkers and laboratories hummed with energy. Autonomous drone factories churned tirelessly, creating vehicles invisible to detection. Energy grids connected subterranean command centers to orbital weapons arrays with near-instantaneous response times. AI systems calculated millions of potential scenarios every second, each tailored to anticipate the Empire's most likely maneuvers. The humans were not reacting in real time. They had already acted before the Empire had even conceived a plan. When reinforcements arrived, confidence still radiated from the Imperial commanders. Their defenses are minimal, Admiral Krell had boasted before the second wave deployed. We will intimidate them into compliance. They will yield. They cannot match our numbers. But humans had studied every Imperial tactic for decades. They understood the psychology of arrogance and the assumptions that drove military hierarchies. As the new fleet approached, sensors recorded subtle energy field distortions. Small anomalies in warp coordinates, imperceptible to untrained eyes, caused minor but cumulative navigational errors. Ships drifted slightly off course, shields oscillated at irregular intervals, and communication delays became erratic. The humans were shaping the battlefield without ever firing a shot. Then the orbital arrays activated. Projectiles struck engines with millimeter accuracy. Energy dampeners crippled shields. Drone swarms, emerging from hidden orbital factories, disabled weapon systems without harming crews. Each move was deliberate, calculated, and precise. The humans were demonstrating a principle alien commanders could barely comprehend. True power is exercised through inevitability, not chaos. Amid the confusion, the Empire's arrogance began to erode. Officers tried to issue orders, but every command had already been anticipated. The humans did not simply counter, they orchestrated every engagement. Ships that attempted to retreat found themselves intercepted by automated systems that guided them into controlled stasis. Fleets that attempted evasive maneuvers found their paths blocked by invisible, pre-positioned drones. Each Imperial initiative was met with a human response calculated decades in advance. On the surface, humanity maintained its calm. Civilians remained unaware of the massive invisible war waged above them. Traders delivered supplies as normal. Miners maintained operations underground, and cities functioned seamlessly. Every movement was purposeful, feeding the underlying network of defense and control. Humans had weaponized ordinary life. Their civilization's continuity served as camouflage for the dormant, unstoppable arsenal beneath and above. Across the galaxy, intelligence nodes recorded the first whispers of an anomaly. They are patient, a Thrin analyst reported from the edge of known space. Their defenses are everywhere, yet nowhere. They act without engagement, control without aggression. We have never encountered anything like this. The Empire, still blinded by hubris, underestimated the humans a second time. Commanders deployed a larger fleet, assuming raw numbers could overwhelm a species they deemed inferior. Humans responded with the quiet inevitability of centuries of preparation. Kinetic weapons targeted engines, disabling them before ships could fire. Drones swarmed in perfect coordination, neutralizing weapons and communications without harming crews. Energy projection grids drained shields systematically. Every tactic the Empire relied upon to assert control was rendered obsolete. The humans demonstrated not just technological superiority, but strategic genius. Their patience was not passivity. It was planning on a scale alien commanders could barely imagine. Entire fleets immobilized without a single human casualty. Strategic points neutralized without destruction. Civilians untouched. The humans wielded inevitability like a blade, slicing through arrogance and ignorance with precision. Admiral Krell's confidence collapsed. His subordinates, once cocky and arrogant, were now paralyzed with disbelief. They had assumed humans could be intimidated, manipulated, or overpowered. Instead, the humans had weaponized their silence, patience, and preparation. They did not need to strike recklessly to dominate. They only needed to act with perfect timing, precision, and calculation. By the end of the second engagement, the Empire's fleets had sustained crippling losses, not in ships destroyed, but in capability lost. Propulsion failures, communications breakdowns, and weapons incapacitation had rendered the invaders powerless. No human had fired an unnecessary shot, yet the battlefield had been irrevocably reshaped. The humans had demonstrated that their power did not come from destruction, but from inevitability. Even as the Empire reeled, the humans' restraint became a psychological weapon. Alien officers, now immobilized in orbit around Earth and other human-controlled systems, recognized a terrifying truth. They had underestimated a species that measured strength not in fleet size or firepower, but in preparation, patience, and foresight. One misjudgment, the first scout fleet had spiraled into disaster for the Orion Empire. Humanity's actions were deliberate and precise, but also moral. They did not annihilate fleets unnecessarily. They left civilian populations intact. They did not exploit fear beyond the strategic purpose of asserting control. Every step reinforced the humans' ultimate lesson. Dominance could be exercised with wisdom, patience, and inevitability. Across the galaxy, historians and tacticians began to whisper the same realization: humans are patient, humans are precise, and humans are inevitable. And one fatal mistake, underestimating them, could trigger consequences no empire could recover from. By the time reinforcements were recalled, the humans had completed the second phase of their strategy. The Empire's arrogance was shattered, fleets immobilized, and the galaxy's perception of humanity irrevocably altered. Patience had won where raw power would have failed. Preparation had triumphed where aggression had faltered. The lesson was clear: underestimate humans at your peril. And the Empire, confident and arrogant only days before, was already reeling from the consequences of its first misjudgment. One mistake against humans had begun a chain reaction the galaxy would never forget. By the time the humans fully engaged the second wave of Orion fleets, the scale of their preparation became terrifyingly evident. The Empire had assumed the humans were a fledgling species, small, limited in resources, and reactive at best. They had not prepared for a species that had mastered foresight, anticipation, and inevitability. Every Imperial maneuver was countered before it could even begin, every decision anticipated, every weapon neutralized before it could fire. Humanity had turned patience into a tactical superweapon, invisibly shaping the battlefield with precision unmatched in galactic history. The Orion Empire's command was now in chaos. On distant worlds, officers attempted to coordinate reinforcements, sending fleets to relieve the immobilized squadrons in orbit around Earth. Every transmission was intercepted, every warp jump monitored. The humans' orbital arrays were not merely defensive, they were predictive. Kinetic strikes disabled engines before fleets could escape. Drones swarmed in orchestrated formations, neutralizing weapons systems, overriding control panels, and rendering entire crews helpless without shedding a single drop of blood. Even the most advanced AI of the Empire was outmatched. Human algorithms had anticipated the anticipators. Imperial officers stared at their displays in disbelief. "Impossible," Admiral Krell muttered, eyes wide. "Their technology cannot be real. They are too small. Their fleets too primitive. Yet every move we make is anticipated. Every weapon we fire neutralized before it fires. How? On Earth, the humans continued to operate as if nothing had changed. Daily life went on. Markets, schools, factories, and transit systems functioned seamlessly. Children played in parks while above them. Entire squadrons of Imperial warships drifted immobilized in orbit, their crews bewildered and powerless. To anyone observing casually, humanity appeared ordinary. But underneath the surface, below the streets and mountains, the hidden machinery of inevitability continued to hum with quiet, unstoppable precision. Subterranean control centers coordinated every movement of drones and orbital arrays. Autonomous factories built replacements and repairs in real time. AI systems ran millions of simulations per second, adapting to every unexpected variation in the Imperial fleet's tactics. Humanity was not reacting. It was executing a preordained plan, one that had been refined over generations. Every conceivable Imperial strategy had been calculated, tested, and countered before the first scouts even arrived. The humans were executing inevitability with mathematical perfection. The psychological impact on the Orion Empire was devastating. Fleet commanders could not comprehend what they were facing. They had assumed that overwhelming force and rapid strikes would secure compliance. Humans did not comply, nor did they fight in the conventional sense. They exercised control over the outcome itself. Every move of the Empire was neutralized. Every plan was preempted. Every expectation of superiority was subverted. The humans' patience was now a weapon as deadly as any beam or missile. As the immobilized fleets drifted in orbit, human drones silently clung to their hulls, disabling propulsion, weapons, and communication in calculated sequences. Every attempt at resistance only highlighted the inevitability of the human strategy. No human had fired an unnecessary shot. No civilian life was endangered. And yet, the Empire's power was collapsing around them. Systems once thought invulnerable communications, hubs, jump points, fleet command centers were systematically neutralized. The humans were dismantling the Orion Empire, not with brute force, but with relentless, patient precision. The scope of the human strategy began to dawn on the Empire's higher command. Historian advisors, military tacticians, and political analysts studied the unfolding events with horror. The humans had not rushed to dominate. They had built an infrastructure of inevitability. Centuries of preparation had gone unnoticed by the galaxy, hidden beneath the guise of a primitive species. Their cities were small, their technology apparently modest, their fleets few but beneath the surface. They possessed the architecture of unstoppable control. Even as the imperial fleets floundered, humanity exercised moral restraint. Civilian populations were untouched. Planets were left intact. Captured crews were treated humanely, often given guidance on how to retreat safely or avoid unnecessary losses. The humans demonstrated that the ultimate form of power was not destruction, but inevitability, an omnipresent influence that could render aggression irrelevant without creating chaos. From distant observation posts, alien scholars whispered in disbelief. They do not fight like any species we know. They do not react. They anticipate. They do not strike blindly. They neutralize precisely. This is beyond our understanding. The realization spread across the galaxy. Humans were not merely another species. They were a force governed by principles that no other civilization had mastered. Patience, calculation, foresight, and moral precision. Meanwhile, the Orion Empire attempted to regroup. Entire fleets that should have been coordinated were paralyzed by unexpected system failures. Supply chains were disrupted. Command nodes failed, one after another, as human drones preemptively disabled key points. Each attempt to assert control only accelerated the Empire's unraveling. Humanity had learned the Empire's weaknesses without firing a single lethal shot. Their restraint became a weapon, their patience became inevitability, and their observation became domination. In orbit around Earth, the human strategy reached a critical threshold. Fleets immobilized, command structures paralyzed, reinforcements neutralized. The Empire's arrogance had blinded it to the simplest principle. A patient, prepared species is often far deadlier than an aggressive one. Humans had weaponized every asset, every algorithm, every infrastructure element, and every century of preparation. And they had done it quietly, invisibly, inevitably. By the end of the third day, it became undeniable. The Orion Empire's greatest fleets were incapacitated. Commanders who had assumed humanity's submission were left bewildered, powerless, and humiliated. Across the galaxy, the lesson began to crystallize. Underestimate humans at your peril. Their patience is power, their preparation is unmatched, and their inevitability cannot be countered. For the first time in its history, the Orion Empire understood a terrifying truth. One misjudgment, one failure to respect humans, and even the mightiest forces could crumble without resistance. Humanity had shown that silence could be lethal, patience could be overwhelming, and preparation could eclipse raw strength. The galaxy watched in stunned awe as the Empire's power eroded before a species it had deemed insignificant. And humanity, as always, remained calm. Life on Earth continued uninterrupted. Children played, merchants traded, and energy grids hummed steadily. Above them, orbital arrays and drones executed the final stages of the human's strategic precision. Every motion calculated, every possibility anticipated, every imperial mistake amplified. One error against humanity was already enough to unravel centuries of dominance. The galaxy began to whisper, then shout, the lesson that would echo through every star system. Humans are patient, humans are inevitable, and humans are a force no one can misjudge without consequence. One mistake against them, and empires fall. The Orion Empire was learning that truth the hardest way possible. The Orion Empire, once unchallenged in its dominion over 300 star systems, was unraveling. The humans' patient strategy had exposed a fatal flaw in imperial doctrine: the reliance on intimidation, brute force, and untested assumptions. Commanders across the galaxy watched helplessly as the fleet they once deemed invincible lay immobilized, their technology neutralized, not by firepower, but by foresight, anticipation, and relentless precision. In orbit above Earth and its neighboring colonies, the humans activated the second phase of their plan. Orbital arrays, previously dormant, shifted into full operational status. Thousands of drones, previously concealed within asteroid belts and hidden orbital stations, emerged in perfect coordination. Each drone moved as part of a larger algorithmic pattern, targeting propulsion systems, energy grids, and communications nodes with surgical precision. Entire squadrons of the Empire were rendered immobile before they could issue coherent commands. Admiral Krell's hubris had been shattered. His pride, built on centuries of imperial dominance, gave way to disbelief. How is this possible?" he muttered, staring at his fleet schematics. "Our numbers, our weapons, they should overwhelm them. And yet everything we do fails before it even begins." His officers were silent, too stunned to respond. The humans were not merely fighting, they were orchestrating inevitability itself. Humanity's strategy was not reckless aggression. Civilians remained untouched. Entire planetary infrastructures were preserved. The humans had not deployed lethal weapons indiscriminately. Their precision neutralized only what was necessary to assert dominance. Every step, every calculation, every preemptive strike was executed with a meticulous balance of efficiency and restraint. They demonstrated that true power lies not in destruction, but in control. Meanwhile, across the Orion Empire, chaos spread like wildfire. Supply lines were severed before reinforcements could be mobilized. Command centers were intercepted by human-controlled communications nodes, leaving Imperial officers blind and disoriented. Entire star systems, once under tight Imperial governance, observed the humans' restraint and precision, realizing that their supposed small, primitive adversaries wielded a force beyond imagination. Panic, not fear, gripped the Empire's bureaucracies. On Earth, life continued with eerie normalcy. Children played in the parks, merchants conducted trade, workers maintained infrastructure. To anyone observing superficially, the humans appeared ordinary, fragile even. But beneath the surface, the mechanisms of control operated flawlessly. Subterranean factories produced autonomous drones. Orbital platforms adjusted in real time to enemy maneuvers. AI systems simulated millions of possible outcomes, each one preemptively countering Imperial strategy. Humanity had weaponized patience, silence, and foresight into instruments of unstoppable dominance. The Empire attempted countermeasures. Fleets were dispatched from distant sectors, warships bristling with weapons of overwhelming power. Every attempt, however, was anticipated and neutralized. Kinetic interceptors struck engines before ships could fire. Energy dampeners drained shields with exact precision. Drones immobilized weapon systems without casualties. Attempts at electronic warfare were met with pre-programmed counter-algorithms, turning Imperial calculations against themselves. Every action the Empire took, humanity had already anticipated. Within weeks, the Empire's control over its territories collapsed. Colonies that once trembled under Imperial rule declared independence, guided by the invisible but decisive human influence. Supply networks disintegrated. Command hierarchies fractured. Communications became unreliable as human-controlled nodes manipulated data streams to neutralize imperial authority. The Empire's once absolute rule had become an illusion, held together only by the desperation of its panicked commanders. Historians and military analysts across the galaxy began to comprehend the humans' genius. "They do not attack without purpose," one whispered. "They do not engage without calculation. They neutralize, control, and command without striking indiscriminately. This is beyond anything we have encountered." Scholars noted the subtlety of human strategy. Entire fleets incapacitated without bloodshed, infrastructure preserved, civilians unharmed. Humanity had mastered the art of inevitability, turning patience and preparation into a weapon more effective than any cannon or missile. Even as the Empire crumbled, the humans maintained moral restraint. Captured crews were treated humanely, often given guidance on safe withdrawal. Planetary environments were preserved. Humanity's victory was not built on annihilation, but on foresight, discipline, and precision. Every Imperial asset disabled was done so with surgical care, leaving the Empire paralyzed but intact. The psychological impact on the remaining Imperial forces was devastating. Confidence had been shattered. Arrogance had been replaced by dread. The idea that the humans were primitive dissolved entirely. What remained was a species whose patience was strategy, whose foresight was weaponized, whose silence could immobilize entire fleets. One mistake, one single underestimation of human capability had caused the collapse of centuries of Imperial dominance. Galactic observers took note. Civilizations that had once sought to emulate or align with the Orion Empire now reconsidered. Humans were not just a minor species confined to Sol. They were a force defined by inevitability, patience, and precision. The Empire's fall became a case study in the dangers of underestimating a disciplined, calculated adversary. The Empire's fleets drifted silently in orbit, immobilized by humans who had yet to fire a shot of destructive force. Their command structures were paralyzed, their communication networks controlled by the very species they had dismissed. Entire worlds that had once served the Empire now acknowledged the humans' quiet dominance. And throughout all of it, Earth remained peaceful, ordinary, functioning, while above and below the surface, systems of inevitability ensured that one misjudgment, one arrogant assumption had been enough to collapse the greatest empire in known space. The lesson echoed across the stars. Underestimate humans at your peril. Their power did not lie in aggression or size. It lay in patience, preparation, and the inevitability of their precision. And the Orion Empire had learned that lesson too late. The Orion Empire, once a monolithic force that seemed untouchable across 300 star systems, had crumbled not through reckless aggression, not through overwhelming firepower, but through the quiet, deliberate, inevitable precision of humanity. Fleet after fleet, command structure after command structure, entire planetary administrations had been neutralized, incapacitated, and rendered strategically irrelevant, all without the humans firing a single unnecessary shot. The galaxy had witnessed the most extraordinary reversal in its history, and the lesson was indelible. One mistake against humans was catastrophic. Humanity's victory was not celebrated with fanfare, parades, or ostentation. From the surface of Earth, life remained normal. Children laughed in playgrounds, markets thrived with commerce, miners emerged from subterranean tunnels, Scientists continued their work in labs, and governments conducted mundane operations as usual. To the casual observer, the planet was ordinary, peaceful, and entirely unaware of the silent, devastating reconfiguration of galactic power happening above and around them. But beneath that calm exterior lay a network of systems, machines, and strategies designed to ensure the survival and supremacy of their species. Humanity had wielded inevitability itself as a weapon, demonstrating the ultimate form of control. Absolute precision executed with moral restraint. As the immobilized fleets of the Orion Empire drifted helplessly in orbit around human-occupied systems, their crews came to an undeniable realization: humans were unlike any other species they had ever encountered. They were patient, calculated, and morally exacting. They did not rush to dominate. They did not annihilate indiscriminately. Every maneuver, every strike, every countermeasure was executed with a discipline and foresight that surpassed even the most advanced galactic AI. They had transformed patience into power, restraint into inevitability, and strategic foresight into an unstoppable force. Across the remnants of the Orion Empire, panic became despair. Entire colonies, once bound by fear and loyalty to the Empire, systems that had relied on imperial oversight, now acknowledged the humans' quiet dominion. Fleets that had been considered invincible were powerless under the invisible hand of human control. And the Empire's bureaucrats, generals, and advisors who had once assumed dominance over the galaxy scrambled to comprehend the scope of their catastrophic misjudgment. The arrogance that had carried them for centuries had blinded them to the most fundamental truth: humans, underestimated and dismissed, were inevitable. Humanity's methods were as remarkable as their results. The orbital drone fleets, subterranean factories, and AI-controlled networks were all instruments of surgical precision. Every imperial vessel immobilized, every communication line intercepted, every strategic asset neutralized had been executed without unnecessary destruction. Civilian populations remained unharmed. Entire planetary ecologies were preserved. Even the humans' enemies recognized the moral dimension of their strategy, a combination of absolute effectiveness and careful restraint that other species could scarcely comprehend. Galactic historians would later write volumes on the human paradox, a species that appeared unremarkable, underpowered, and ordinary by conventional measures, yet capable of wielding inevitability as a weapon. A species whose patience could immobilize fleets, whose calculation could unravel empires, whose foresight rendered centuries of planning irrelevant. One fatal misjudgment, the initial dismissal of human capability, had been enough to trigger a cascade of failures that led to the Orion Empire's collapse. Humanity had proven that raw strength was inferior to preparation, that hubris was no match for discipline, and that restraint could be more terrifying than aggression. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations watched and learned. The stories of immobilized fleets, neutralized fleets, and the quiet power of humanity spread like wildfire through interstellar channels. Political leaders and military commanders took note. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were patient. They were inevitable, and their capacity to prepare for and neutralize threats surpassed even the most technologically advanced civilizations. For those who had once mocked the small, confined species in soul space, the lesson was clear and unforgettable. On Earth, humans continued life as normal. Children played, cities thrived, and commerce continued. Above them, The orbital systems maintained vigilance, subtly controlling the remnants of the Orion Empire's fleets. Underground, the drone factories hummed with continuous production. AI systems ran simulations of countless potential threats, and communication networks monitored distant sectors of the galaxy. Humanity's power was absolute, not because of aggression, but because of preparation, patience, and inevitability. Their victory was invisible to the untrained eye, yet irrefutable in its consequences. The Empire's collapse, as dramatic as it was, had not been bloodless. Imperial officers and citizens who attempted resistance were neutralized with precision. Yet at no point did humans overreach. Every act of force was calibrated, every intervention measured. Civilians remained unharmed. Even as entire fleets drifted powerless, humanity's moral restraint was evident. They had demonstrated that true power was not the capacity to destroy, but the capacity to control, anticipate, and enforce inevitability with wisdom and precision. The galaxy, once dominated by arrogance and the assumption of dominance through fear, learned a profound lesson. Humans were not the largest, the fastest, or the most technologically overwhelming species, but they were the most inevitable. Their patience was power. Their foresight was unerring. Their restraint was absolute. One mistake, one underestimation, and even the greatest empire fell. And humanity's legacy was established. A species whose very nature, patient, calculated, and morally precise, was sufficient to reshape the galactic order. The Orion Empire's collapse became a testament to the quiet, terrifying force of human inevitability. Every historian, military analyst, and diplomat across the galaxy would remember the same lesson: never underestimate humans. Their silence is deliberate. Their patience is strategic. And when they act, the universe itself must yield. The humans' triumph was complete. They had shown that one mistake against humanity, one moment of arrogance, one failure to respect their capability was enough to unseat centuries of power. And in the calm, ordinary streets of Earth, life went on, seemingly unchanged, while the galaxy trembled in awe, forever altered by a species that had mastered inevitability itself. Humanity had not only survived, they had prevailed. And in doing so, they ensured that the universe would never again make the mistake of underestimating them. One miscalculation, one oversight, one underestimation against humans, and the consequences were absolute. The Empire had fallen. The galaxy had learned. And humanity had secured its place as the inevitable force that no power could ignore.